Change is the only constant. Change is the spice of life. Cliches we've always heard. But change and adaptability are the cornerstones of the success of human species on Earth. Look at me. I'm a Tamil Brahmin, married to a Marwadi Baniya, settled in Jaipur for the past 20 years. Adaptable I was, successful I am. I might take pride in this fact, but that's the truth of it. And I do hope you agree with me. Shelter by far has the largest evidence on Earth by which we can view the passage of time and how much we have evolved. That is the core of this festival, metamorphosis, change, how we perceive it as architects, how we deliver it as society influencers, and a lot more is what we hope that we will see as discussion today and tomorrow as a part of this festival. And today, dear audience, we abide by being prepared for change by adapting. It is with immense regret that I'd like to tell you that Dr. Yeang has sadly taken ill and due to health grounds wasn't able to travel from Malaysia yesterday. But if nothing else, we've got the pandemic to thank for because he'll still make his presentation and we are going to do it virtually. I hope you abide by this change too. So a quick round of applause to us for being the human species, a quick round of applause to ourselves for being adaptable, and a quick round of applause to Architect Tushar Sugani, IIA Rajasthan Chapter Chairperson and Convener, whom I call upon stage to present his welcome note.
Good morning, everyone. You know, when you do a festival like this, there are moments when there are few moments of joy and few moments of sorrow. Today, very disappointed since yesterday morning when Dr. Yeang said that his doctor is denying to travel. Me and my team felt very bad. Rather, we were disappointed. And because we were very keen that this festival needs to be done absolutely on a physical mode. We want to show the world a message that yes, pandemic is now endemic. So, but it was not in our hands, but he gracefully told that he will be able to address us online, and I think you all have to bear with this. So friends, just to give a very glimpse about today's evening, we had a fantastic heritage walk in the morning where we thought that we are going to, have a density of around 50 people, 50 architects, but today the turnout was 200. And this is the beauty of Rajasthan. This is the beauty of my walled city. So thanks. I'm hoping that tomorrow we'll have 250. So just after this, we are going to have our different sessions, which is actually following a story of heritage to modern, the main theme, metamorphosis in architecture. So today we have got two different halls. Hall A, where we are going to talk on imagining a re-adaptive future. This will be moderated by Manish Chakrabarti, and the speakers will be Mr. Amarnath, Abha Narayan, Dr. Abu Said, and Vinod Kumar. The panel session will be Architecture of Democracy. Moderator will be Architect Sanjeev Vidyarthi, who has come all the way from US to attend this festival. The speakers will be Architect Habib Khan, Lali Chand Zakaria, Jitendra Mehta, and Vivek Bhole. And after that, we have expert speaks, Pankaj Dharkar, who's going to talk about the challenges of MEP in heritage building. Being a stakeholder, we need to learn from him. And after that, none other than, panel session Master Speaks, architect Sirish Berry, whom always people are excited to listen to him, for your address, sir. Thank you for gracing this festival. And after the lunch, we'll have a session, coalescing modern materials in the traditional terrain. So how, my Havelis can be equipped with the new and modern material. And this will be moderated by Madhav Raman. And the speakers will be Dipen Gada, Siddharth Talwar, Vivek Singh Rathore, and Kozima. And parallel to it will be in the session, Architectural Transformation. Moderator will be Salil from Mumbai, Faid Mazid, Rajesh Rangnathan, Reza Kabul, and Rita So from Singapore. And since you all are aware, my friend Geeta, can I see you, Geeta? You are here? Geeta did a fantastic job for the fraternity. She traveled from Kolkata to Delhi, 1,700 kilometers for a cause. We will really like to understand what was that cause. So we'll interact with her. Prashant is going to interact with you, Geeta. So look for, and after that we'll have an architectural quiz. You will test your brain, what we have done in 5 years of studies. So we'll have an architectural quiz. And after that, we'll have a Kala evening in an heritage park which was constructed in the year 1726. So enjoy the architecture in the afternoon and festival in the evening with a lot of fun. So thank you from my side. Over to you, Preeti. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Tushar. It's now the time to start this session in earnest, and we are immensely blessed and thankful to have Dato Dr. Ken Yeang as our first keynote speaker. To introduce Dr. Ken Yeang, I request Architect Mukul Goyal, Vice Chairperson IEA Rajasthan Chapter, to take the stage and present his introduction.
Thank you, Preeti. And good morning, everyone. I hope you're having a great morning. And of course, as we just heard, that everyone's back from the Heritage Walk and they had a great time out there. So let's continue with this. I'm here to introduce Ken Yeang. He's an architect and an ecologist, known for his signature hypo-green architecture. This is a field he pioneered since 1971. His early training was at the AA School, that is the Architectural Association of London, and received his doctorate on the topic of ecological design and planning from the Cambridge University, where he is an honorary fellow of the Wolfson College. His work is differentiated based on the science of ecology, something being the originating text of humanity's activities on the planet. His work has received numerous awards, almost 70 plus, which includes the Prince Claus Award, Netherlands, the Liang Chang International Award, China, and many others. His personal awards include the Government of Malaysia's Merdeka Award, the Malaysian Institute of Architects, Gold Medal, the World Association of Chinese Architects, Gold Medal, the Siamese Association of Architects, Gold Medal, that recognizes his work that performs beyond conventional green rating systems. His work has a distinct visual signature, verdant green aesthetic that balances the organic with the inorganic, inbuilt systems which he calls as constructed ecosystems. Third party's recognition includes the Aga Khan Award for his Messenger Tower. His built projects include the DG Data Center, the Swasna Putrajaya, recipient of over 7 awards, the Genome Research Building, Hong Kong, the National Library, Singapore, the Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital Extension, UK. And this is through his projects, he advanced his ideas, his principles, and systems in ecological and bioclimatic architecture, which has contributed greatly to the field of sustainability. And of course, these are published in over 12 books, which he has authored on ecological design. Currently, he is the distinguished film professor at the Illinois University. The British newspaper Guardian names him, please note, one of the 50 people who can save this planet. So let us put our hands together for Ken Yeang.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Mukul sir. Good morning, Dr. Yeang. A pleasure to have you with us today.
Yes.
Are you able to hear us?
Yes, yes. So I want to apologize to everyone that I cannot be there in person. My doctor advised me that I should not travel. And of course, as you know, I'm not as young as I used to be. And besides other things, I have a heart problem. Let me just dive into what I'm going to present to you today, which is the topic of designing for a resilient planet. It's such a complex topic that I am not able to do it comprehensively, so most of our work are, if you like, experiments that seek to advance the field of ecological design. This is our general method for what I call for discovery invention. Our work is research-based, and from the research we derive generic principles and concepts, which then we try to interpret by design and get it built. And then from there, we evaluate, discover, advance principles, which we get feedback, that then we further develop generic principles and concepts, we publish, and we try and seek improve what we do for further research. The key factors for ecological design for me is as a set of infrastructures. And these infrastructures are fivefold: nature as an infrastructure, people as society as an infrastructure, our built environment as an infrastructure, our energy systems, and the hydrology of the environment. I'll explain why these factors in my presentation later on. But essentially, nature is the ecosystems and the biochemical cycles of our planet. The people is our social, economic, political, and institutional systems. The built environment are everything we make as human beings, which is artifacts, structures, infrastructures, technology, including food production. Energy systems are both which we should seek to become renewable, have zero emissions for zero energy and zero carbon. And the hydrology of the environment, which is essentially water management and conservation. If you like, this is a summary diagram of nature, going clockwise: humans, technology, our built environment, energy systems, and water. And this is what it is, what these are in greater detail. And the objectives of each of these are trying to achieve net positive ecological impact, net well-being for society, net zero water, net zero waste and emissions, and renewable energy, net zero carbon. The challenge then is how we can bring all these together into a whole. And this is what ecological design is for me. And I haven't been able to achieve this 100%, but I try and, it's a continuous experiment and endeavor over our work. So now the first factor that I want to bring to mind is ecocentricity, which is designing the built environment based on the science of ecology. The reason is that ecology is the baseline context for everything that takes place on the planet. And that because the ecology of the planet is interconnected, we have to start with this as the basis for everything that we do and all our activities on the planet. Now, ecology sees the Earth as covered by this thin film called the biosphere. And within the biosphere are units in nature which ecologists call ecosystems, which consist of biotic constituents and abiotic or communities of plants, animals, and the physical environment acting together to form a whole. But to add to this is our human society. Our human society is part of the communities of plants and animals, but we are special, we're different from all species in nature because we are the most powerful of all species. We can change the landscape, we can change the waterways, we can change the biogeochemical cycles, we can change climate, and now the world is in an environmental crisis, and we don't have very much time to rectify and recover our planet. And so it's an urgent endeavor. Now, of course, if you tell businessmen, you tell the commercial world, they'll say, why should we design ecologically? Why should we design for the planet? Frankly speaking, earnestly speaking, it is extremely difficult to give a commercial justification for ecological design. And we do it because it is an ethical thing to do. We do it because we have to make sure the planet continues in a good state, in a good condition for future generations. Now, of course, if we don't, then our human society may not be able to perpetually continue. But nature doesn't care. Nature says, you human beings, you kill yourself, you hurt yourself, but we'll continue, we will recover over time. But why do we need to design ecologically? We have to design ecologically because we want to continue and be sustainable. So the next is the built environment, which is everything that we make as human beings. And because we are careless in the way we create energy and throw waste into the climate is in a dreadful state. This is at a crisis. And so the proposition that I want to present to you today, and this is the single most important idea, is that we need to remake our built environment as human-made ecosystems so that it biointegrates seamlessly and benignly with the natural environment. And so that's our physical environment. Then I started to think, when I first started in this field, that actually our built environment, that everything we make is physical, almost physical, because of course there's landscaping and there's agriculture and there's forestry. And if you look into our built environment, if you look around the room that you're in right now, where is the biotic constituents? The only biotic constituents is you and the bugs in the room. And so the idea was that can we remake the built environment as human-made ecosystems? And that to try and seek to do that, we need to practice what I call eco-mimicry. We have to remake the built environment as human-made ecosystems through emulating, replicating, and augmenting the built environment with nature. And so I started to look at what are the attributes of ecosystems we need to emulate and replicate to make constructed ecosystems. So these are some of them: biological structure, biodiversity ecosystems, connectivity, provision ecosystem service, and so forth. It is a complex endeavor. And trying to achieve this in our built environment is extremely difficult. I can only do a very small part of this in my work, but I hope I can achieve as much as I can in my lifetime. So now let's look at the first one, which is ecosystem attribute, which is biological structure in the built environment. As I mentioned, the built environment that we are in, that we've built, is 99% inorganic. Of course, there's landscaping, there are some open spaces, but the inorganic surpasses by far the organic aspects. So I start to look at patterns in which I can bring greenery into the built environment. I've identified 5 key patterns here. The first one is called centralized, where we put everything in one location, dispersed where we have a spotty pattern. The second is a stepping stone, where we have greenery, which is close to each other but not quite connected. The fourth is the spine with fingers sticking out from the spine. And the fifth is a continuous linkage. The fourth and the fifth are the ideal ecologies because the species and the vegetated areas are interconnected. Interconnected enable species movement, enable a greater species direction, and have a larger pool of resources to be shared among species. It engenders a much more stable ecosystem. And so we should try and achieve the third and the fourth in our design in as much as possible. Now, I started putting vegetation buildings back in 1985. And one of the early work is the dispersed pattern. As I said, it's not ideal, but that's how I started. And this was a tile that I did back in 1985, where I put the vegetation on the outsides of the building in a series of sky courts. And of course, it also became at the same time of exploring the idea of the low energy passive mode biochromatic skyscraper. And you can see the lift cores and escape staircases are on the hot sides of the building on the east side and west side. But I'll go into this later on. The building is column free and from north to south is about 26 meters. So it is ideal for financial institutions, so you don't have columns inside the floor plate. Now, what we have done as human beings is that we fragment nature, we fragment the environment. You chop up nature, you chop up the landscape by roads, by rain, drains, by fences, by impervious surfaces. And our designing must try and restore these fragmented ecosystems and try and link them together. And so somebody was asking me, how do we make our cities green? So I said the first thing you need to do, without going into technical aspects, is to link all your green areas because you chop out the nature by building your city. Reconnect nature, make nature whole again. And so that's the first thing you need to do, but not just horizontally. We should bring it into our buildings. And so the idea that once you do this, then our built environment is heading towards a balance of the biotic and abiotic constituents. This was an early project that we designed where we brought the vegetation in a spiraling lens, spiral all the way on the outside, right to the top of the building. And the idea was that when the spiral ramp reaches the roof of any adjoining building, we bridge it to the adjoining building and we green the adjoining building. So this was an idea that we could start to make our city, to green our cities, not just horizontally, not just vertically, but also, at the upper parts of the building. Of course, this is just an idea. Nobody's taken it up already yet, but it is a proposition. So now connectivity then is extremely important. I call this ecological nexus because this is how we can make nature whole. And so nature actually is much more complex than we think it is. You look out your window, all you see is just vegetation. That nature has processes that you and I cannot see, not visible to human eye. There is animal communities, there's different species, it makes pure water, there's photosynthesis and so forth. And so, it's important then for architects to understand ecology. Now, it's extremely difficult for me to talk to my colleagues today because 99% of my colleagues do not have a background in ecology. And they get very annoyed when I tell them that you have to study ecology. But it is crucial to save the planet because then you understand the processes that take place in nature that we cannot see. And so back to this diagram and back to the preferred ecological pattern, which is on the right-hand side. We did this building in Singapore where the idea was to bring vegetation up the facade. With every facade, we climb one floor. And so the idea was to have a vegetated ramp And then next to the ramp, we have a walkway, and so that the walkway so that you can service the vegetation without going through the user floors, because that annoys the users no end. And so it took us a while. It took from 98 to 2005 that we finally got it built. And you can see the vegetative zone, which is on the periphery of the building, the walkway, the sun shading, and the curtain wall. And so this is the building. Vegetation climbs every floor, going all the way up. And that, now I call this a linear park because it's actually a park, but it becomes very boring if it's all linear. So we articulated, we punctuated the corners with what we call sky courts, so that people from going up the linear park can interact with people inside if they wanted to. And this sky courts could be used for having meals, for conversations, for even small seminars. And you can see what the sky court actually looks like on the right-hand side. And you can see in the middle image is the sky court. And the top left is, where the sky court is in the built plan. The plan is this irregular shape because that's the shape of the site. The master plan of that site, the entire site, was done by the famous Iraqi architect, Zaha Hadid, who died about a few years back. Then building is actually two blocks, A and B, linked by bridges. This one, the bridges. And then in between the two blocks is an atrium. The atrium, we have a glass roof that brings daylight and ventilation into the atrium. The atrium isn't fully air conditioned; it is just cool air being blown into it, and so this makes it this reduces the energy consumption of the atrium and the building. This is the glass roof when it's cold, when it's closed, when it's raining. But on a normal day, it is open to let the air out, and here it is, and it's automated. So that if it rains, it's, that regardless the smart building, that if it rains, it automatically shuts. And then another idea that we developed is what we call the diagonal light shaft. On the right-hand side, you can see an image looking up the diagonal light shaft, and you can see the skylight. And this is the atrium that we see, and this is looking down a light shaft into the street level. On the street, actually, you can look up and look at the upper parts of the building. And then at the edge of the building, we bring the vegetation all the way down to the basement, which we call an eco-cell. And this is where it's located on the plan. And this brings vegetation, daylight, and natural ventilation to the inner parts of the building. Now, one of the attributes we try and incorporate is what we call biodiversity, because nature is biodiverse. We as human beings, we simplify nature. If you look into most landscapes, we have, very low number of species, and sometimes we even use the wrong type of species. We really mess up your ecology. Species of swallowtail butterflies. You can see the highest biodiversity is near the equator, and it gets increasingly less and less as we hit above the northern upper parts of the hemisphere. So now our design approach to enhance the biodiversity is to create what we call habitats in the built form. Habitats could be on the roofs, can be in terraces, can be on the walls, it can be on the ground, it can be inside atriums and so forth. And that is the approach. So when you design a constructed ecosystem, we create habitats within the built form. This is a building that we completed about 3-4 years ago. And the habitats, if you like, are in this diagram. The floor plan is as you see below here, and the upper parts marked in red are where all the habitats we created in this development. The plan is basically two chevron-shaped building. You enter from the south and the southeast and southwest, and that in between is an atrium, and the building is a 17-story building. And you can see the vegetation on the east side. Now, why are there two buildings? It's because there's an axis going all the way down from the plaza at the north, all the way down to the Millennium Monument in the south. And so that we had, in order to maintain access, we split the building. So now what we do is that having to put in the habitats, as you can see in this matrix, we do research on what is the fauna that were existing in this locality that we want to bring back. And so the next is to identify the fauna we want to bring back. And to attract the fauna, we identify the flora that will attract the fauna. And then we look at the interaction of all these with the habitats. And that becomes the basis on which we design the habitats and the landscape areas in the building. So we call this the biodiversity matrix approach to design. So here's the floor plan again. The building is located along the axis. You can see the long axis in the township of Putrajaya, which is about 20 minutes away from Kuala Lumpur. It's the new capital city. And then there's a secondary axis that is an angle leading to the Millennium Monument that you can see on the left-hand side, which is also designed by us about 8 years earlier. And here's the monument with the Ministry of Financing across the waterfront. The water is actually a detention pond, so that the water from the drainage of the water goes to the detention ponds, which then filters back into the ground. It is not, it's not an expensive lake created for the sake of this development, but it's a natural detention pond that was created. The aesthetic for the building, we wanted to make this something special. So we wanted to make it look like jewel-like, like a gem. And so we faceted the facade. But if you just facet the facade, it looks really boring. So we articulate the facade with slices, with punctuated voids. And then for the cultural heritage, we took the songket pattern that you can see on the right-hand side, which is a pattern from the Malay woven fabric, and it is representative of an exquisite level of exquisite aspect of the Malay community. And it's actually a double skin building. The outer skin is the faceted fritted glass, which is about 51% is white frit, and then there's a walkway for servicing. There's the inner wall, and so the fritted glass then becomes an experimental substitute for the horizontal louvres of sun shading. So this, in that case, this is an experiment, and this is what it looks like from the outside. And then the last image is what it looks like from the inside looking out. So the fitted pattern doesn't really obstruct the view out extensively, but in some aspects it is, it is a pattern that you can see, and the fitted eccentric fitting is about 50% clear and 50% opaque. And on the west side, to represent the Kipat hot sun, it is angled. And so, in fact, you could actually look at the building and look at the sides of the building. You can tell where it's north, south, east, and west. Now, the average office building uses 210.5 kilowatt hours per square meter per annum, whereas with the fritted glass facade, it's reduced down to 136.18, which is about 70% less. And then the eco-cell, again, we bring it vegetation all the way down to the basement. You can see the eco-cell at the back of the building. The eco-cell idea was something we developed, about 5-6 years earlier. Sorry, I put a message as this spot. What is this? That brings vegetation, rainwater, and the natural ventilation into the bottom of the building. Now then, how do you address the biodiversity in high-rise built form? So this is the high-rise built form that is now under construction. We had a tree structure, and then we have fingers going out into vegetated sky courts. And this is a preliminary research where we look at trying to identify what species to bring back. The red dot shows where our site is. And here with us high-rise building, we try and bring songbirds, butterflies, and dragonflies into the building, and these are different zones within the building, and this is the biodiversity matrix for that building. Now, one of the ecological factors attributes we want to bring, emulate and replicate is the provision of ecosystem services. And ecosystem services is really complex. It is so complex and so difficult for us to emulate technologically. Then, so do we give up the idea of designing and constructing ecosystems. Things that nature does for us is to provide ecosystem services such as producing light photosynthesis, provides solar energy, and sequestering of the contaminants in the air. And so with this building, what we did was to put as much vegetation as possible into the building, into the mid-level roofs, into the uppermost roof. And the vegetation ratio, according to the rating system, is 6, but we achieved double it, we achieved 12.2. And so this is one of the things that we try and do to try and augment the capability of the building to provide ecosystem services. Now here's an example where this time we have ecological corridors, ecological fingers, and this is a scheme that we designed in La Reunion, which is an island east of Madagascar. And here we try and weave the pattern of the green areas and the urban areas, the built-up areas, almost cheek by jowl, so that the greenery, the green fingers provide ecosystem service as close as it is to the urban areas. Now, obviously, this is not always not possible in existing city. You look at London, you see the Hyde Park and Regent's Park is location, and the rest of the city is all built up. And so this is the scheme that we designed for the Reunion. You can see the vegetation coming up from the waterfront and the green fingers going down. And this is the master plan. You can see the two things combined. And the built-up area, the urban area is about 30 meters. We allow for 30 meters, and the green, this fingers is about 20 meters. And that the edges should be serrated so the species can hide from prey, species can reproduce, and species can live within some level of protection from the outside environment. And so with water management, we should try and then bring the water back into the ground as much as we can. And this is a project, a master plan we designed in Bangalore, where there is a forest reserve. We collect all the species in the forest reserve, we bring it across the site so it can connect to the adjoining areas. And then we have detention ponds to bring the water back into the ground. And for the buildings, we try and return and recycle the water as much as we can. But those we cannot use, the black and the gray water, we bring it back to the ground through a series of blast wells and detention ponds and water treatment. Here's an example of what a detention pond looks like. There's a series of ponds where the black water gets filtered and purified as we head towards the left-hand side, where when you reach the pond on the far left, it's almost potable. And this is where the greenery, which is brought connected across the site to link to adjoining buildings. And then, of course, the greenery and the roads intersect. Now, that's deadly. You can't do this. So what we do is that we create eco-bridges so the green is continuous from one side to the other side. Now, for designing for net zero energy, zero carbon, the idea then was to try and start through a series of steps from passive mode to mixed mode to full mode to productive mode, where productive mode means you generate your own energy. So passive mode means basically by climatic design, we design with climate. And so now if you look into a local site, which is, let's say, north of India, you have a cold winter and you have a hot summer. And then by climatic design, through shaping of the building, through facade design, through orientation of the building, we can improve the comfort conditions to some extent. And so so that's the first stage in designing with nature. The next stage is to use mixed mode, where we use some mechanical electric systems. And finally, we use productive mode, where we use renewable source of energy. And so, if you like, that's the approach to designing our low-energy buildings. Passive mode means, as you can see on the right-hand side, our build orientation, configuration, facade design, optimizing the ambient energies by natural ventilation and so forth. And so with this building that I showed earlier on, we did some studies to show what happens with different core positions, different orientation. As you can see in the one that you can, on the left-hand side, the cores on the east and west side is the lowest energy consumption for the building. And so they act as buffers between the outside and the inside. And then for passive mixed mode means we try and one of the ways we try and give protection is through what I call a canopy building. And I call this an umbrella building. And this was the house that we did back in 1985, where we had a louvered roof that brings in daylight into the east side and keeps out the sun on the midday and the west side. Uses of 42 kilowatt per square meter per annum, whereas 131, which is a lot of houses, use that amount. This is a canopy over a guardhouse. This is a canopy over a railway station. And this is a canopy over another railway station. And for a university, this is the University of Malaya, we use the same filtered glass idea, put it as a canopy over the university hub. Now, in between is mixed mode, where it is some mechanical electrical systems. And so the idea of mixed mode is to try and extend the mid-seasons of spring and autumn into the winter and into the summer months to reduce the need for air conditioning and need for heating in the winter. And so this is the Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital extension. What we created was a glass flue in front of the facade. You can see there, which is that shaped building. And this, sucks in the air from the ground to naturally ventilated lower floors and the exhausts on the outside. And we did the same thing with this project in Beijing, which is about 52 degrees above the equator. We renovated the building so that we could bring, okay. And productive node is where we try and use renewable source of energy. And this is the building that is now currently we're working on, where we put the productive mode of photovoltaics as a canopy over the building. Of course, another idea was to put embedded photovoltaics in the glass of the building, and the whole building then becomes either like a power plant. And for net zero waste, we try and recycle everything back into the built environment or integrate it back into the natural environment. And for regulation of chemical composition, we try and recycle the material as much as possible. We use GPS to try and identify which parts of the planet is affected. We take immediate action. For human society, we try and design for enhanced wellness and well-being. And that, and before I end, I want to talk a bit about this diagram. Because ecological design is not the responsibility of just architects, engineers, and designers. It is the responsibility of us as human beings. So now, if you ask yourself, what if we get everything right? We design properly with nature, we design with water management, we design structures which have minimal waste, and we design energy systems renewable. What if we as human beings do not behave ourselves? We have the wrong diet. We have wasteful energy, we waste water, wasteful materials. And so ecological design is not just us, not just engineers, but society as a whole. So the key principles I presented today is ecocentricity, was designing based on the science of ecology, the ecomimicry, remaking the built environment as human-made ecosystems by emulating, replicating ecosystem attributes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Dr. Yeang. Actually, it was with apologies that we won't be able to take a question-answer session post this presentation. Dr. Yeang has said that he'll be sharing his mail ID with all of us for any queries that you'd like to put up. Oh, there he is. Good. Oh, great. Dr. Yeang, thank you so very much for this wonderful presentation. The fact that you said that nature doesn't care is what caught my attention the most. We've seen the beauty of how nature's self-cleansing nature during the pandemic, where the human intervention was at a minimum. We saw that. And the minimum intervention in architecture, which seemed to be so contradictory. And the fact that you spent a lifetime trying to find the balance is what really inspired me. So thank you very much for coming to the Rajasthan Architecture Festival and addressing us. Like I was just telling the audience, we'll be sharing your mail ID with anyone who has any queries. The team will be putting up Sir's mail ID on the screen, so please do take it down and send in your mails for any questions that you would like to ask of him or anything that you'd like to get sorted. I request all of you to give Dr. Yeang a resounding applause for his work and for his presence at the Rajasthan Architecture Festival. That's the mail ID for all of you. Thank you, Dr. Yeang. Thank